Hello again and welcome back to my blog. Part 7, Troward's The Creative Process in the Individual. The second and last part of Chapter 3, The Divine Ideal. This, it will be seen, leaves the individual absolutely unfettered, except in the direction of breaking up the fundamental harmony on which he himself, as included in the general creation, is dependent. This certainly cannot be called limitation, and we are all free to follow the lines of our own individuality in every other direction. So that, although the recognition of our relation to the originating spirit safeguards us from injuring ourselves or others, it in no way restricts our liberty of action or narrows our field of development. Am I, then, trying to base my action upon a fundamental desire for the opening out of truth, for the increasing of livingness, and for the creating of beauty? Have I got this as an ever-present law of tendency at the back of my thought? If so, then this law will occupy precisely the same place in my microcosm, or personal world, that it does in the macrocosm, or great world, as a power which is in itself formless, but which by reason of its presence necessarily impresses its character upon all that the creative energy forms. On this basis, the creative energy of the universal mind may be safely trusted to work through the specializing influence of our own thought. And we may adopt the maxim, trust your desires, because we know that they are the movement of the universal in ourselves, and that being based upon our fundamental recognition of the life, love, and beauty which the Spirit is, their unfoldments must carry these initial qualities with them all down the line, and thus, in however small a degree, becomes a portion of the working of the Spirit in its inherent creativeness. This perpetual creativeness of the Spirit is what we must never lose sight of, and that is why I want the student to grasp clearly the idea of the Spirit's self-contemplation as the only possible route of the creative process. Not only at the first creation of the world, but at all times the plane of the innermost is that of pure spirit. And therefore at this, the originating point, there is nothing else for spirit to contemplate excepting itself. Then this self-contemplation produces corresponding manifestation, and since self-contemplation or recognition of its own existence must necessarily go on continually, the corresponding creativeness must always be at work. If this fundamental idea be clearly grasped, we shall see that incessant and progressive creativeness is the very essence and being of spirit. This is what is meant by the affirmativeness of the Spirit. It cannot per se act negatively, that is to say uncreatively, for by the very nature of its self-recognition, such a negative action would be impossible. Of course, if we act negatively then, since the Spirit is always acting affirmatively, we are moving in the opposite direction to it. And consequently, so long as we regard our own negative action as being affirmative, the Spirit's action must appear to us negative. And thus it is that all the negative conditions of the world have their root in negative or inverted thought. But the more we bring our thought into harmony with the life, love, and beauty which the Spirit is, the less these inverted conditions will obtain, until at last they will be eliminated altogether. To accomplish this is our great object. For though the progress may be slow, it will be steady if we proceed on a definite principle, and to lay hold of the true principle is the purpose of our studies. And the principle to lay hold of is the ceaseless creativeness of the Spirit. This is what we mean when we speak of it as the spirit of the affirmative, and I would ask my readers to impress this term upon their minds. Once grant that the all-originating spirit is thus the spirit of the pure affirmative, and we shall find that this will lead us logically to results of the highest value. If then we keep this perpetual and progressive creativeness of the Spirit continually in mind, we may rely upon its working as surely in ourselves as in that great cosmic forward movement which we speak of as evolution. It is the same power of evolution working within ourselves, only with this difference, that in proportion as we come to realize its nature, we find ourselves able to facilitate its progress by offering more and more favorable conditions for its working. We do not add to the force of the power, for we are products of it, and so cannot generate what generates us. But by providing suitable conditions, we can more and more highly specialize it. This is the method of all the advance that has ever been made. We never create any force, ergo electricity, but we provide special conditions under which the force manifests itself in a variety of useful and beautiful ways. Unsuspected possibilities which lay hidden in the power until brought to light by the cooperation of the personal factor. Now, it is precisely the introduction of this personal factor that concerns us, because to all eternity we can only recognize things from our own center of consciousness, whether in this world or in any other. Therefore, the practical question is how to specialize in our own case the generic originating life, which, when we give it a name, we call the Spirit. The method of doing this is perfectly logical when we once see that the principle involved is that of the self-recognition of Spirit. We have traced the modus operandi of the creative process sufficiently far to see that the existence of the cosmos is the result of the Spirit seeing itself in the cosmos, and if this be the law of the whole, it must also be the law of the part. But there is this difference, that so long as the normal average relation of particles is maintained, the whole continues to subsist no matter what position any particular particle may go into, just as a fountain continues to exist no matter whether any particular drop of water is down in the basement or at the top of the jet. This is the generic action which keeps the race going as a whole. But the question is, what is going to become of ourselves? Then, because the law of the whole is also the law of the part, we may at once say that what is wanted is for the Spirit to see itself in us. In other words, to find in us the reciprocal which, as we have seen, is necessary to its enjoyment of a certain quality of consciousness. Now, the fundamental consciousness of the Spirit must be that of self-sustaining life, and for the full enjoyment of this consciousness, there must be a corresponding individual consciousness reciprocating it. And on the part of the individual, such a consciousness can only arise from the recognition that his own life is identical with that of the Spirit, not something sent forth to wander away by itself, but something included in and forming part of the greater life. Then, by the very conditions of the case, such a contemplation on the part of the individual is nothing else than the Spirit contemplating itself from the standpoint of the individual consciousness, and thus fulfilling the law of the creative process under such specialized conditions as must logically result in the perpetuation of the individual life. It is the law of the cosmic creative process transferred to the individual. This, it seems to me, is the divine ideal, that of an individuality which recognizes its source and recognizes also the method by which it springs from that source, and which is therefore able to open up in itself a channel by which that source can flow in uninterruptedly, with the result that from the moment of this recognition, the individual lives directly from the originating life, as being himself a special direct creation, and not merely as being a member of a generic race. The individual who has reached this stage of recognition thus finds a principle of enduring life within himself. So then the next question is, in what way this principle is likely to manifest itself? And I suppose we'll investigate that tomorrow. Make it a great day, and bye for now.